So I'm sure you all remember my first sketchbook tour I did uh, more than a year ago. It's been quite a while now. I don't really draw in a sketchbook anymore. You know, once I stopped working and stopped taking my sketchbook everywhere with me, it just kind of became only digital art. But I decided I have a remedy for that. I will just show sketches that I have on my computer. Um, So I've compiled a few sketches. This is our first one. This has been sitting on my desk or on my computer for years, at least 2 years. You can see that these character designs are very outdated by now, but I still really like the concept. Maybe I'll come back to it someday. I've always wanted a window like that in real life to sit in and stare at the sky. So of course I had to make an art piece that reflects that, but I don't know why I've never finished it. I'll open it up every once in a while and look at it for a few minutes and then close out of it again. But there's that. We've got this, which is a little bit newer. It was a drawing challenge that was like, draw your favorite Pokemon of each type. And I'm like, well, that's normie talk, so I'm going to draw my persona as different Pokemon types. So I did exactly that. I don't know why there's no ghost type. Apparently I didn't get to that one. But this is only half of the page. It was really tall, so I split it into two images so you can see the details a little bit better. I'm not going to talk about each individual picture because I don't really have anything to say about them. It's just my persona as different Pokemon types. I never really got around to finishing it. I did start cleaning them up, which you can see here. The rest of them were just sketches, so I didn't even bother to show that. I only showed the four that I had gotten black outlines on. So there's that. This was a vent piece, but I still really like the way it looks, because I like the way I drew Grace's hands. Again, this is really old though, because she's got her old ears. And Dallas's ears are still small. But I really like the way her hands came out. I like the way both of their expressions came out. So maybe I can repurpose that someday. This is a collection of sketches of Dallas. I really wanted to do something with his whole like gold motif. But I know it. The only one that actually went anywhere is this one right here, which I don't have it on hand, but I did draw a finished picture of that sketch at some point, and it came out really cool. I don't know if I'll ever finish the other sketches. Probably not. They're probably just going to sit there. This was the beginning of an OC reference sheet that I didn't finish. This is like the third version of his reference sheet that I've made. I'm very indecisive about it. He doesn't even have arms or legs or ears, but I kind of mostly just included this one for the sketches at the bottom right there, because they're kind of cute. And tail hole, he's got a tail hole without the E at the end. This is a picture that I had in my brain for a while, because I was working on this species of mythical creature, fantasy creature, where they lived underground and their whole city was in caves, and they had these tall buildings, and it was kind of like if you can imagine a dark alleyway, except that's the whole city. And it was very cool. And yeah, there's a phallic image drawn at the bottom there, just ignore that. I actually got pretty far in this, or pretty far as in like 20% of the way through. I resketched the character to be more detailed. I drew out the flat colors for the buildings. You can see I overlaid the sketch so that you can see what was what. But I just kind of didn't go any further on that for some reason. This was part of what was going to be an animation. that I kind of gave up on, but I thought I'd just include this one sketch because I really like his expression here, even if it's only half of his face. Probably because I was planning on mirroring the image, which is, you know, prime way to get a face symmetrical is to just copy one side and flip it. This was also part of an animation. You could see I did that exact thing I just said, where I took half of the image and flipped it because it just looks cool. And it's just Dallas looking cool because he's very fun to draw. This is a good example of my very, very first draft arts, where I will think of a setting in my head and think, oh, that's really cool. I have to draw this immediately or I will forget. So in this case, the situation was one of my characters was going to ask another character for something and he was going to say no, and it was going to be really dramatic. But because I just wrote no doing something and indignant and it's just two faces, it's not the most interesting sketch, and I think that's why I've never come back to it to finish it, because it's just, I didn't give myself enough sketch to work with coming back to it. This isn't a sketch, this is pretty finished, but it's not finished. It's just my Animal Crossing character. I planned to do more with it, so I never posted it anywhere because I didn't think it was finished. And it's still kind of cute, but I'm not super happy with it. So I'm probably not gonna finish it or post it or anything. I'm just gonna look at it while it's on my computer, I guess. This is kind of in the same vein, except with this I do want to finish it. I just don't know where to go, because for me one of the most difficult steps in art is the shading and the lighting, and just figuring out where the shading is going to be coming from, figuring out what technique I want to use when shading. It's super hard to choose, and for this I even, I tried a few times different shading methods and just none of them were coming out how I wanted it to look. So it's been kind of just sitting around for a while. But I like the dynamic pose. It's, I don't always go super dynamic, so I'm proud of how this looks, and I do want to finish it someday. I just gotta figure out what to do with it. This is another example of a really quick sketch that I had to get down before I forgot what I wanted it to look like. The initial idea was that this is again the species that lives underground. So this is a picture of her coming out onto the above ground for the first time. So she's got her little sun hat on, and the sun was going to be in the top left there shining down on her, and it was going to be really pretty. With the grass in the foreground blowing around like a pretty meadow. I just, again, never got around to it. Maybe someday. I still really like the mental image of that one. This one got pretty close to being finished. You can see I finished the character, I finished the lines, I finished the colors. Didn't get to the shading again, because it's so hard to figure out how to do shading, and then you can see the background is sketched in. The crookedness was on purpose. Also, I just want to put that out there. It was supposed to be crooked like that, so that it would look a little bit more dynamic. I'd love to finish this one someday too, because again, the image in my head is super cool. It was going to be like a snowy field with the pine trees, and it was going to be super cool, with like a little cabin on the hill there, which is, I assume, where she's going. I don't know, but maybe someday. This is pretty much finished, but I was really unhappy with the result, so I just didn't completely finish it. I didn't post it anywhere because I don't like how it looks. The idea in my head was awesome. I loved where it was going, and then I put in the shading and the lighting, and I didn't like it anymore, which is a really dangerous part of shading, because that's just what happens. It can make or break a drawing, and in this case it broke it. I don't like how it looks, and I don't have the energy to go back and fix it or do it again, so I can just look at Dallas being edgy in a city. This is a really bare bones sketch that I just had of I just had an idea of Locke where he's got his arm out and he's dramatically bleeding because he's a freak, and he's like, oh, I might be bleeding, but it's okay. And I think that the words there above his head say poogers, I'm pretty sure, which is like poggers, but with an extra O because I'm immature. I've been trying to figure out what that said since I put this into the video. Like, when I saw this picture, I'm like, I'm gonna put this in the video. Oh, I don't know what that word says. I hope I didn't write something weird, but I think it just says poogers. So that's that. These are really, really bare bones sketches, and they were just kind of joking because I was talking to a friend, and I was like, wow, how funny would it be if I drew my character in really silly poses that were like kind of suggestive, but they were too silly to be taken seriously. So that's what these are. And yeah, it sure was funny at the time. Now it's just kind of like, sorry. This is a collection of sketches that I didn't really intend to finish any of them. They were just kind of like I was doodling. I don't really have much to say about any of these. It's just a lot of expressions. I like drawing expressions a lot. You know, just kind of messing around, warm-ups. This is some sketches of Locke, and I decided to include the finished version because the sketch in the bottom left there is a sketch, and then the finished version is on the right. Because I was gonna, you know, I was just kind of I knew I wanted to draw Locke with his sword, and I was trying to figure out which pose I wanted to use, and I ended up choosing that pose. So maybe I'll finish the other two because I do kind of still like how those look, but you know, one at a time. You gotta take it slow. Here's another picture of Locke being weird. I don't really have an explanation for this. I just had the pose idea come to me. I'm like, yeah, I'll draw that and not have a reason for it. I'll finish it one day. Again, shading trips me up and makes me afraid to touch it again, so it's just kind of been sitting around for a while. But that one I do plan to finish. It's not over yet for him. This is just another sketch of Locke with his sword, even though he has no defining features or legs. But it is Locke, I promise. You can kind of tell by his claws. It's his one defining feature in this instance. But I really like this pose, so this is a more recent sketch. I still plan to finish that one. And this is the time when I go. Those were all sketches or unfinished or probably won't be finished stuff. This next segment is art that has been finished, but I have the layer files to them still. So I thought, oh, how cool would it be if I show the sketches from art that I finished and like the process. So that's what this is. This is a piece that I'm still really proud of how it came out. This is the initial sketch, which you can see is really simple. You know, the character expressions are kind of nothing. A lot of stuff is just shapes. Like, is that a bookshelf in the background? I don't know, probably. They look like books, but who knows? And the book that she's holding literally just says blank on it, so that's cool. This is the background of the finished piece, which I always think it's interesting to see stuff like this, because I don't really think about it when I'm making it, because the characters are in the way, of course. But these hard shadows and like how the ferns up there that I didn't even, you know, erase outside of the lines, they're not even finished. But it's just because the characters are in front of that. So, you know, why put effort into it if the viewer's not going to see it anyway? And here are the flat color characters who are, you know, slap them into the picture, put some overlays and some shading. And you can't see at all that I left a bunch of stuff unfinished, uncolored, you know, outside the lines. You can't see any of it because of that tricky trick where you just put the character in front of the stuff you don't want to finish. It's brilliant. This is, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell what this is a sketch for, because I couldn't find the original sketch, but this is of the Bad Boy Halo picture I did. I wanted to share this mostly because of the boots at the bottom. Those two are my actual boots that I took pictures of for reference. The ones on the far right is a Google image so that I could see the style I was going for. But I took a picture of my actual hiking boots and put them on my desk in the pose I wanted to draw them in. So don't be afraid to use real world references if you can. Very cool. This is the background for that picture, which I thought was pretty cool on its own, so I decided to include that even though it's not super detailed. Here are the lines, which I included because I think there's a lot of detail that got lost in the finished picture because he's got very dark colors, so you lose a lot of like the face details and the details in the clothing. You can see my boots there. You can see that definitely use them to draw. There it is with the flat colors. Again, you can see how much is lost as soon as you put the colors on. I like to look at the line art just to remind myself of all the effort I put into it that gets lost once I put the dark colors on it. And this is the finished picture. I don't really have a lot to say. I'm just really proud of how this came out in the end. You know, so what if some of the details are lost? I think it's still really cool. And I brought out some of the lines with, especially around the sword, where the sword is glowing a little bit. The lines turned a little bit blue as well with the sword glow, so those pop out a little bit more. These two pieces I put side by side because I worked on them at the same time. I did each step at the same time. So I sketched both of these at the same time, and you can see it's kind of like telling a story here, where on the left side the cat, he's crouching. His name is Hawk. Hawk is crouching, about to pounce on this rabbit, while the other cat, Storm, is up in the tree. And then in the right image, Storm is up in the tree watching Hawk hunting the rabbit. And it's cool because they're like connected from different perspectives a little bit. It was a very cool little bit of practice for me. I don't think I've done anything like that before, but it came out really cool. This is the backgrounds for these pictures. I'm really happy with how these backgrounds came out because I don't generally do lineless painting type stuff. But I did in this case, and I think it came out really cool. And these are just the flat color characters as well as the foreground, which I decided to include in the same frame because the foreground is so small it would have been strange for me to show it all on its own. But the foreground, I specifically put a little bit of blur on it so that it looked like it was closer, which is an effect you'd get if you took a picture of something or if you were looking at something. Not generally seen. Like, I could have just left it not blurry, but I thought it was a neat effect so that it looked a little bit more realistic despite them being very cartoony animals. And then the finished product, that's whatever. The finished art where you've got all the shading, the shading of the leaves on Hawk's fur in both pictures. The really dark shading on Storm's back from the leaves above her. There's a lot of detail. The little whiskers got put in there. There's the little grass between Hawk's claws. A lot of little things that went into this. I'm very happy with how both turned out and how they turned out together. So this is the fighting scene between my character and my friend's character, where they're fighting in the Minecraft end. They're fighting the Ender Dragon. This is the very bare bones sketch, which I didn't even realize I had on hand, so that's cool. This is, again, pose in my brain. Need to get it down fast or I will forget it, which is why it looks like crap. And then the actual sketch, which is much more detailed, but it still follows the same bones of the initial sketch. but it's just a lot more detailed. And I can go through like 3 different stages of sketching once the bare bones are done. This is probably my second sketch. I probably did a sketch before this of the characters' designs, and then I did this sketch afterwards to nail down some more details that I knew I would need when doing the line art. Next is the background, which, you know, the one thing I would change about this picture is that I forgot to add the Enderman, which would have been a huge deal to make this a little bit less desolate. Which the Minecraft end is desolate, but I wanted to add the Enderman and I just forgot. But it's still, you know, I did the speedrun trick where you blow up the bed and it hurts the dragon. You know, in hindsight, maybe it would be a little bit stupid to use the beds when you haven't even broken the crystals yet, but that we don't worry about that. Here's the flat color characters on their own, just hanging out, clashing swords. Grace has a diamond sword because I personally think they look cooler, and the other character, Lucy, who belongs to my friend, has a netherite sword because he actually has his priorities straight and uses the stronger weapon, whereas I go for aesthetics. And here's the finished picture with all the lighting effects and the shading and all the coolness, all of it. This was made around the same time. Another picture of Grace and my friend's character eating ice cream, because around the time I was meant to visit Florida to meet her in real life, and we were gonna get ice cream together was our biggest plan, but it didn't work out, so I drew this picture instead. So here's the sketch. I don't have the initial rough sketch, but this is just the sketch. And I think it's funny how I think Grace's hand that she has extended there, you can see just how many times I had to redraw it because I was struggling to make it look right. Because everything else is pretty, you know, just one line of sketch, but that it has like probably 200 lines because I just kept going over it, and it just didn't look right. But I finally got it eventually. The background of this drawing is really simple, and I wish I could have done more with it, but I could not think of anything else to add to it. So it's just a really simple like pathway with flower bushes and the sunset in the background there, and the floating shadows of the characters. And here's the flat colors of the characters. As always, you know, the ice cream isn't colored yet because I had the ice cream colored on another layer. And it was already shaded, so I decided to just leave that out to show the flat colors of the characters a little bit better. But the ice cream is added here, all the other shading is added here. It was meant to give a really soft feel. You can see the sun reflecting on Grace a little bit there to make it look very warm and nice. This was a redraw from something I did in 2014, I think. I hadn't drawn ponies in ages when I started taking on this redraw, so this was kind of interesting, but I think I did it okay. You know, it's not too much different than drawing a cat, you just kind of extend everything a little bit. So this is the initial sketch of that. This is the flat colors, which the line art was already colored from the shading, so when I went back and I removed all the layers to see the flat colors, the line art is already a little bit orange up at the top from his magic. So, and his eyes are orange too, which they aren't usually, but for this picture, they are, and I was gonna remove that and not include the eyes, but then his eyes were just gray like the rest of him, and it looked really creepy, so I decided to keep the orange. And I didn't show the background by itself because it's very, very simple. I just used a lot of assets that Fire Alpaca provides, like the spiky linear effect. I don't know what that's called. Motion lines, whatever. I've added a bunch of shading to him. You can see he's got his tear tracks, but no tears yet. So I don't know what. It looks a little bit strange without. It just kind of looks like he's got running mascara. But luckily, his tears do get added, as well as the magic and a bunch of glowing going on. And now you can see that the colored line art definitely fits in a lot better now, because it's reflecting his magical surges or whatever's going on. There's not really any story to this picture besides I was redrawing something from years ago that had a similar concept, so I just kind of went off of that. And this is our last showcase, which is the Azrael, another redraw of Azrael from Undertale. This is the original sketch. Well, not the original, this is like the third sketch probably I did, because this has had a lot of details. Both hands, I took a picture of my own hand in that exact position and then traced it. So both of those hands are my actual hands, except with claws put on them. Fun fact. This picture, I also used a whole new, I used a whole new way to draw the foot paws. I've never drawn paws like that before, but I've seen other artists draw it, and it just kind of seemed to work with this drawing, so I just kind of went with it. And then I have the lines and the very flat colors. He doesn't even have any colors, it's just one flat color. And this drawing actually corrupted, or not the drawing, the layers corrupted. So when I finished the picture, I saved it and it crashed. It crashed mid-save because there was so many layers, it just couldn't handle it, apparently. So I have the finished product, which is here, but I don't have anything in between because I didn't save the progress pictures between that time, because I assumed I'd have the layers by the end of it so I could go back and get them then, but I didn't. It didn't save. So it skips from the line art to pretty much the finished product, which is fine. You know, I can talk really quickly about how this drawing is probably my favorite one of this year so far, just because of how many new strategies I had to use, or just new things I had to try. Like, I have two different light sources here. One light source from the fireball in his hand, and another light source from the bit of magic going across his front. And the two light sources are the most clear if you look on his tail, where there's shading in the middle of his tail, but not on the ends, which was really strange to do. And also on his arm, where the shading is in the middle, but he's got lighting on the top and the bottom. But I think it looks really, really good for something that I've never really done before, experimented with before. You know, all of the colors, all of the anatomy looks really good. It helps when I trace my own hands to get the hand anatomy looking really good. The face looks really good. You know, the background is, you know, a Google image, but that's okay. That's the texture that he's got on his wings, so you know, using a Google image, I feel like in that case is okay, because I have no idea how I would recreate that by hand. And that's it. That's the digital sketchbook tour. Thanks for watching. I'd like to do more of this in the future, you know, now that I realize that it doesn't have to be a physical sketchbook. The only difference is I can't throw the sketchbook on the floor this time. I could throw my laptop on the floor, but that would be really bad, and I don't even have a camera, so if I'm gonna throw something on the floor, if I can't record it, then what's the point of throwing stuff on the floor, you know? So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed seeing that stuff that's not really ever made it onto the internet before. I hope some of it was found interesting. And if you want to follow me on and see more of my art, I'll put the links in the description to my Tumblr and my DeviantArt and my Toy House. I don't really post on DeviantArt anymore, but on Tumblr and Toy House I post a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching.